So I wanted to do a video about Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek and what it meant to me, and also how I think it's going now. But I just want to acknowledge first, there's a lot of people who criticise Gene Roddenberry as a person. Now I think for starters you have to separate the artist and their vision and their work from the person and their personal life and their personal choices. I'm smart enough to know I don't know Gene Roddenberry personally, so I'm not going to comment on his life. But people like Jesse Gender and some other critics are happy to trash him and say that he's racist and homophobic and sexist and all these things, which is insane to me. And I don't exactly know what they're founding any of this on. But it's something I want to acknowledge because I just want to talk about Star Trek and the vision. But it does seem to be a cliche now that whenever a franchise is being redeveloped or rebooted, that in order to promote the new show, they have to demean and degrade and dismantle the original and put it down so they can elevate the new show. And this is a really ugly trend, which I'm finding is happening all over the place, happening in She-Ra and Thundercats and He-Man. And I just wanted to acknowledge it, but at the same time sort of give my opinion on that as well, because it's a pretty low bar if you have to insult everyone else to try and make yourself sound better. It just seems to be a marketing thing. It doesn't seem to be really based in any reality. But I just wanted to cover that and comment on that before I go into my little video about what I thought about Gene and Star Trek. Hello, Steve White, TrekWay89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, I noticed yesterday it was Gene Roddenberry's, what would have been Gene Roddenberry's 100th birthday. And I was debating, do I do something about it? I'm like, what can I say about Gene Roddenberry? I mean, who am I to say anything about a genius, a visionary? Yes, I know he was just a man and he had a lot of help to create the show. He didn't create it all by himself, but he had the initial idea, maintained that integrity, and continued it and pushed it until he passed it on to Rick Berman, who did the same thing. But then I saw some other people talking about Gene's birthday, people who have no right to talk about him. And I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to do a video. So I was looking at some of his quotes, and I was thinking about how they related to some of the things that I have a problem with now in the show. That basically the people who are in control of the show now don't believe Gene's vision, they don't understand it. They contradict it, they dismiss it, they discard parts of it, the parts that don't suit them. They keep the parts that do suit them, which are great elements to promote, but they're sort of at the cost of other elements of the overall vision that Gene had of Star Trek and what Star Trek was established as. And I wanted to go through some quotes just because they can help explain why I feel that way. Okay. Star Trek was an attempt to say that humanity will reach maturity and wisdom on the day that it begins not just to tolerate, but take a special delight in differences in ideas and differences in life forms. If we cannot learn to actually enjoy those small differences, to take a positive delight in those small differences between our own kind here on this planet, then we do not deserve to go out into space and meet the diversity that is certainly out there. That's true. He totally respected and promoted diversity. He understood it, and it's true. If you look at other science fiction, like things like Independence Day, it's only when we're threatened by someone else that we come together and realise our differences don't matter. These are all important things, and New Trek does celebrate that, but unfortunately they also, they only do it because it suits their personal politics, and they sort of discard other elements around it just to promote that element, which in itself is not bad, unless you look at what is, left aside. And so far as religion, we question the story logic of having an all-knowing, all-powerful God who creates faulty humans and then blames them for their own mistakes. For most people, religion is nothing more than a substitute for a malfunctioning brain. If people need religion, ignore them and maybe they will ignore you and you can go on with your life. It wasn't until I was beginning to do Star Trek that the subject of religion arose. What brought it up was that people were saying that I would have a chaplain on board the Enterprise. I replied, no, we don't. So Gene didn't believe in religion. He thought science would free us from religion. He thought we were better than that. Humanity was better than that. This was something that small-minded people bought into because they didn't have the faith in humanity or themselves to actually think past being told what to do and being controlled like that. That's what primitive people believe in. Evolved people don't. So that was what he believed, but yet Deep Space Nine brought in religion. Star Trek Discovery maintained the idea of religion. They'd made Chris Pike, who was not religious, into a religious zealot who actually believed in religion over science, which is a total contradiction of his character and a validation of today's religious right, that they're trying to put those people in the show and validate that, which is just the opposite of what Gene wanted. I still can't believe they did that, but they did. And war, yeah. Strength of civilization is not measured by its ability to fight wars, but rather by its ability to prevent them. They didn't prevent any wars in Discovery. They totally engaged in them and promoted them and justified them. Michael Burnham wasn't looked down on for starting a war, and she was just praised for her initial response to the Klingons, which resulted in her mutinying and so forth. I mean, it's Discovery. Deep Space Nine. Gene lived long enough to see Star Trek VI come, and there was the end of the Klingon War, and that's what he wanted to see, and that's why he was happy with that film. And what did they do right after he died? As soon as they could, in Deep Space Nine, they brought back war with the Klingons for a while as well. And this just goes against everything that Star Trek was about and what he stood for. So that always annoyed me, and that's something they still focus on with Discovery. There's always an enemy. Star Trek didn't have enemies and villains. Star Trek had antagonists, intellectual problems that had to be solved with science or thinking, not just fighting. But all Discovery does is, all New Trek does is find a villain and fight them. And this was a trope that began before them, at the end of the Next Gen with the films. But yeah, actually really started with Star Trek II, which came from Gene Roddenberry being taken out of control of the show, and other people coming in, and they reduced it to, well, let's have a villain come back and we'll have fight him. We'll have fighting. We'll just fight him. So it started before New Trek, but New Trek has certainly engaged with it and justified it. And so far as writing and drama, we stress humanity, and this is done at considerable cost. We can't have a lot of dramatics that other shows get away with. Promiscuity, greed, jealousy, none of those things have a place in Star Trek. All the characters in Star Trek, New Trek, not all of them, so many of them though, are all about jealousy, greed, insecurity. I mean, look at the Section 31. They're promoting Section 31. Section 31, Gene didn't create that. That was something R. Stephen Burr or someone made in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which totally invalidates Starfleet and everything Gene believed in. Basically said, well, we can't have Utopia unless we have the alt-right behind it, terrorising and doing all the bad things that we supposedly got rid of and evolved past. They had to reduce and pull Star Trek down in evolution and the humanity back in evolution and say, oh no, we still have this side of us. We just we don't even hide it. We just acknowledge it quietly that it's there and it's a necessary evil. It's just, I hate it. Hate it. How is that quote in there twice? Basically, Star Trek says that it is not all happened, it has not all been discovered, that tomorrow can be as challenging and adventurous as any time man has ever lived. Something that really bothered me about Star Trek Beyond, which was supposed to sort of be sort of an answer to Star Trek Into Darkness on some level, is that everyone was bored with exploring space. There was nothing to see. There was just one dull day after another. That tone that opened that film, just that's why people didn't go back. That's why that film bombed, because it basically said, what's the point in going out into space? It's boring. It's only interesting when we're fighting and there's war. That's what that film said. They totally missed the point, and I could not believe they were that far off. But the wonderful thing about what Gene believed is that Star Trek would be a better future. Tomorrow would be better. There would be adventures that, like you said, we haven't found it all. We haven't worked everything out. Every day is a new adventure. There's always something to see, something to find, something to explore, something to learn about ourselves, about our culture, about other cultures. That's the human condition. That's the adventurous spirit that we have. That we're not just happy to sit on our laurels and assume we know everything, but that's what New Trek people do. They think they know everything about Star Trek and everyone knows everything in the show, and they're not interested in learning or exploring. They just want to fight amongst themselves about religion and capitalism. And Michael Burnham just having to be the center of everything, and having this idea of you idealize one person as like this superhero character instead of having an ensemble of diverse people that we all learn from, and each of them contributes something that allows solutions to problems. It's just so maddening that they don't get it. And I rambled on for 8 minutes, but it just really upsets me that people don't get it. I mean, all they would have to do is read some of these basic quotes from Gene to get how their show is wrong, but they wouldn't even be familiar with any of these basic little ideas that he had, let alone the whole Bible he created for Next Generation. I mean, he was forced to compromise on the original series a bit to get it up and going in the 60s, but when he got the Next Gen with syndication, no network looking over his shoulder, it was exactly how he wanted Star Trek to be. And that's really the true Star Trek. That and the motion picture really is where he had complete control, because the original series had been such a success, they were just like, do whatever you want. Then when it didn't go how they wanted in the motion picture, they sort of pulled him out, and then they had a hard time getting him back in for Next Gen because they had just thrown him under a bus and went to this militaristic version of Starfleet, which he hated. And a lot of people love Wrath of Khan. I grew up watching it thinking it was the best one too, and that's till I evolved and grew up a bit and realised the motion picture and the Voyage Home were actually true Star Trek, and none of the other films are. They're really just finding a villain for basic people to comprehend. Oh, there's a bad guy, we have to beat the bad guy, because that's what they think people are capable of. Gene respected his audience, and he gave them something to think about. He treated them as intelligent. New Trek, they're not very smart, and they don't think people are any smarter than them. They think they're smarter. And unfortunately, the old school fans, we're smarter than them, and it's so hard to stomach Star Trek now. So I wanted to celebrate Gene on his 100th birthday, but I couldn't do it without acknowledging everything that's wrong with Star Trek at this time. And I just pray something comes to change this. Someone gets in charge who understands what Star Trek is and actually gives us Star Trek again, because we need it more than ever. I'm going to go because I could keep ranting forever. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Bye.